Power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to strike you or even threaten you. True power whispers and you obey. You don't even know why. You tell yourself it's right, necessary, logical. But deep beneath that reasoning lies something ancient and primal. The human need to belong, to submit, to be led. Obedience is not merely taught. It's carved into our psychology. And the most dangerous kind of obedience is the one that feels voluntary. Throughout history, every empire, every religion, every corporate structure has relied on one invisible thread: obedience. It's the quiet force that turns ideas into armies, beliefs into institutions, and words into laws. We imagine that those in power control the world, but in truth, power survives because the obedient give it life. We feed it, defend it, protect it. And even when we resist, we often do so within the boundaries that power itself has drawn for us. The real question isn't why some people rule, it's why the rest obey. Why do millions follow orders they secretly despise? Why do soldiers march toward death for flags they barely understand? Why do workers submit to systems that exhaust them? And why do we, in our own small lives, surrender our freedom to voices of authority, to bosses, experts, influencers, even algorithms? The psychology of obedience reveals that power is never truly imposed. It's offered and accepted, the illusion of choice. Every system of control begins with illusion. You are told you have a choice to obey or not. But from childhood, disobedience carries invisible punishments: rejection, shame, exclusion. The mind learns early that survival depends on compliance. So we grow into adults who mistake obedience for morality. We equate rule following with virtue and defiance with danger. Stanley Milgram proved this in his infamous experiment at Yale in the 1960s. Participants believed they were delivering electric shocks to strangers, simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them to. Despite screams and pleas, 2/3 continued to the maximum voltage. No threats, no violence, just the command: the experiment requires that you continue. And they did. What terrified the world about Milgram's study was not that people were cruel, but that they were obedient. The seduction of authority. Humans are drawn to authority like moths to flame. We crave certainty. An authority figure provides it: a teacher, a priest, a CEO, a politician. They seem to know, and knowledge in a chaotic world feels like safety. So we trade our judgment for theirs. We kneel not before the person, but before the illusion that someone else understands the rules of existence better than we do. This is why uniforms, titles, and rituals of hierarchy exist. They are psychological armor, signaling power so convincingly that we yield without question. A white coat turns a man into an expert. A crown turns a man into a god. Obedience flows not to the individual, but to the symbol they represent: the fear of isolation. But beneath obedience lies a darker emotion: fear. Humans are social animals. To be cast out, to be labeled a rebel, to stand alone, it feels like death. So we conform. We nod, we agree, we align with the group's morality, even when it contradicts our own. History's greatest atrocities were not carried out by monsters, but by conformists, by people afraid to lose the warmth of the tribe. The crowd provides comfort, and that comfort becomes the leash. The price of belonging is obedience. The moment you challenge the collective, you become dangerous, unpredictable, expendable. And power knows this. It cultivates fear quietly, not of punishment, but of being alone. The architecture of submission. Institutions design obedience with precision. School systems reward compliance over curiosity. Workplaces promote loyalty over truth. Governments shape fear into patriotism. Religion transforms obedience into moral duty. These systems are not accidents, they are psychological machines. They train the mind to seek permission before action, to wait for validation, to trust authority even when it deceives. And over time, the individual forgets how to think independently. They don't even recognize their submission as submission. They call it discipline or faith or professionalism. The morality trap. Power survives best when it convinces you that obedience is moral. Good people follow rules. This phrase is repeated in classrooms, offices, churches, everywhere control hides behind virtue. But morality imposed from above is often the most effective form of domination. When obedience becomes a moral duty, rebellion feels like sin. That's why tyrannies rarely need constant violence. They control through conscience. The cruel irony is that those who obey out of goodness often do the most harm. They believe they are serving order, justice, or peace, when in truth, they are maintaining someone else's version of it. The seduction of surrender. But not all obedience is forced. Sometimes we obey because it feels good. To surrender control is seductive. Responsibility is heavy. Freedom is exhausting. How easy it is to let someone else decide, to let someone else carry the burden of truth. In surrender, there is relief, and in that relief, obedience finds its deepest root. Every cult, every authoritarian movement, every manipulative relationship begins with that soft whisper. You don't have to think anymore. They'll think for you. And we listen because part of us longs to be freed from the chaos of choice. The transformation of the obedient mind. Over time, repeated obedience reshapes identity. You become what you are told to be. The boundaries of self blur into the will of authority. This is why propaganda works, not because it's persuasive, but because repetition erodes resistance. When you hear the same command enough times, it begins to sound like truth. The mind adapts to survive within the narrative it's given. And soon, obedience is no longer a behavior, it's a personality. You stop obeying orders, you start embodying them. Rebellion and the cost of freedom. To break obedience is to experience a kind of death. When you stop following, you are reborn. Uncertain, isolated, naked in the wilderness of your own judgment. That's why true freedom terrifies most people. It demands the courage to disobey not only others, but your own conditioning. Freedom is not granted. It's taken at the price of comfort. This is why revolutions are rare, and true independence rarer still. Most would rather suffer under control than face the void of autonomy. So how do you reclaim your mind from obedience? The first step is awareness. Notice how often you seek permission before acting. How often you silence your instincts because you fear disapproval. Every time you hesitate to question authority, ask yourself, whose voice is this in my head? The second step is internal authority. Replace the need for external validation with your own reasoning. True autonomy is not rebellion for its own sake. It's the ability to decide from clarity, not fear. The third step is deliberate disobedience. It doesn't mean chaos or destruction. It means consciously refusing to surrender your judgment to symbols of power. When you learn to say no calmly, you become ungovernable in the most elegant way. Remember, you can respect power without worshiping it. You can follow laws without losing your mind to them. And you can serve others without becoming their servant. Power has always understood one truth, that control is most complete when the controlled no longer feel its weight. When obedience becomes invisible, power becomes divine. But those who awaken from this spell, those who reclaim the voice of their own mind, become something extraordinary. They cease to be subjects. They become sovereigns. And the sovereign is never truly alone, for his authority comes from within, where no tyrant, no system, no God can reach.